Here's to you, Councilman Anderson. What does your cup have
Uh,
on
Florida
it?
State dad.
Oh,
Well,
I went
let's.
to Miami.
We all have our crosses to bear.
Exactly, exactly. I have a house divided as well. And
They're both ACC.
okay, exactly. There we go.
Let's
And
pick
what is in your cup?
right now, water,
Okay, me too.
the time of day, and ironically, and it's a good thing I retired from the police department when this happened. But after the COVID, I lost my taste for coffee.
What?
I mean, I
Oh,
wasn't a big coffee drinker. I drank about 2 cups in the morning.
okay, yeah.
Occasionally, I might have one during the day.
Hmm.
Very not very frequently, but I lost my taste. So I actually drink tea.
Oh, okay. And any other differences post-COVID? Because we do know that you did have COVID-19 early on.
Yeah, the only other difference is I think I'm a nicer guy.
Really? You attribute that to the appreciation?
I'm sticking with that.
Okay. um, you almost have 2 years under your belt now as councilman.
Yeah, coming up.
Why run for mayor?
Honestly, the same reason I ran for city council
Okay.
is I didn't like the fact that the establishment, the powers that be, whatever you want to refer to them as, already picked who the replacement was for Mike Flander when he retired. And I said to my wife, I can't sit back and just let that happen. I think I can do a better job and bring some change to the council. Well, the same thing's happening with the mayor. Is they've pretty well picked who they think should replace the mayor. And I disagree with it. I think I'm a better candidate because I'm much more in touch with the city. As you know, I have years and years, I mean, over 2 decades worth of public service, another 15 years in the business world, in management. And I'm just, like I said, I'm more in touch with the city. I think I have a better understanding of the needs of the entire city, not just small pockets.
So what would be your first line of duty if you were to become mayor of Fort Myers?
I would push for a top to bottom, bottom to top audit of the city. A hard look at everything that's been going on in the city to make sure that we are in line, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And, hopefully it's going to find that we are doing everything correctly, but it may also identify some areas that we can improve on. And I think we owe that to the citizens.
Would this be an internal audit or an independent outside audit?
No, I would much likely or much more prefer a independent outside auditor. I want someone to come in. Let me back up and say, I've been told so many times by different people, a consultant is someone you need to tell you what you want to know.
So true.
With that being said, there are consultants who provide a very valuable service to the city, as they do in the business world. But I don't want someone to give me a report that I can hold up and say, look how great everything is. I hope that's what we get. I honestly do. What I want to know is, where do we need to focus on making things better?
So you are in touch with the city, you say. What should voters know about you that they might not know about you yet?
And that's a good question, because when I think of the voters, I'm used to dealing with the residents of Ward 4 for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of them know that I have been accessible, responsive, and transparent. When I get a contact from a constituent about an issue, if they give me their address, I usually try within 24 hours to show up at their house, to knock on their door, to give them the opportunity to look me in the eye, and for me to feel, get a good sense and feel for what their issue is. You can read something in an email, but to go out there and see the problem. A good example would be, I think it was on Cordova. A lady in her 80s had complained about the roots growing under the road, and it was like a speed bump, and one big speed bump, rumble strip, and that it needed to be addressed. Well, she gave me her address, so I knocked on her door. And what I saw when I got there was multiple routes had gone under the road. But by talking to her, what I learned was the seriousness of the problem as to how it impacted her as an elderly female living on her own.
Mm-hmm.
That when certain type of vehicles, trucks and whatnot would come by, it literally would rattle her windows. And when she's sound asleep and the windows rattle, it was a very disturbing thing for her. So by going out there and actually talking with her and feeling her concern and seeing it firsthand, I was able to, I think it was within 2 weeks, we had it corrected. Had the road tore up, the roots removed, and the road repaved.
Good for you.
Yeah, so that's one thing. And so I don't know if the rest of the city would believe that. When I campaigned for council, what I heard a lot was, all right, we see you now. We're going to see you before the next campaign. And I promised them, yes, you would see me. I do monthly ward meetings. I'm out in the neighborhood. My wife and I ride our bikes through the neighborhood. We stop. If I don't know someone, we'll stop and introduce ourselves. And I think people really appreciate that I'm out there and they see I'm just like them. I'm nothing special. I've been entrusted by them to represent them. And that's what I'm working hard to do.
A lot of energy, not only to campaign. You love it?
I love it. You know what? Helping someone out with a problem, no matter how small, and this goes back to my police days. People called you, they had a problem. Sometimes it was very minor in our eyes because, we may have left something very much more serious. But I always looked at it like if it was important enough for you to call the police, it was your crisis, no matter how small it was.
Mm-hmm.
And we should treat that just like the next call that may be, something very serious. I also had the same attitude at Chico's. One of my responsibilities there was almost like I was like a jack of all trades, so to speak, with headquarters operations. I was the guy a lot of people would call when they didn't know where to look for something. If they needed something, they weren't sure where to go for it, they would call me. And I was also like a concierge in that I brought in a lot of services. And my nickname, and one of my bosses actually put this in one of my evaluations, that I was nicknamed the mayor.
Mm.
The mayor. And it was, I always looked at it. I told my boss, I said, it's really like being on the police department. People need help with something. It's a different type of help. But, out there in the public, they call the police when they have issues. At Chico's, they call me. Mm-hmm. And I usually can put them in touch with the right people to get their issues addressed. So it's a servant's heart is what it is.
Yes.
And hopefully that's something that wouldn't surprise the people out there, that anybody who's watched me in the last 18 months or have known me through my career in the police department, they would know and understand. I have a servant's heart, and I just love being that way.
So what else would surprise us?
I'm not really sure. Some people might be surprised that I'm a very down-to-earth guy. I try to be very approachable. I recognize my position and what comes with it, but I don't take it so serious like, I'm the councilman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I look at me as being a council person. I look at me as, again, being a public servant. My job is to, give direction to the city manager, make sure that our city teams have what they need to take care of the city and to be responsive to the people. So some people might be surprised because I think in a lot of cases they're used to elected officials kind of being up on a pedestal, maybe. Mm-hmm. Even during the parade, the thing I hate about the Edison Festival of Light is riding in that car. Mm. Until the parade told me I couldn't do it, I would get out of the car. Uh-huh. Much more comfortable walking and high-fiving the kids and shaking hands and thanking people for coming out, asking if they were enjoying it. rather than sitting in the car like I was something special, like I was royalty. It never set well with me.
Have you, and maybe thought about, as mayor, you would be more of a conductor, like you said, bringing people together to try to solve problems. How, as a council member, excuse me, differ than from being the mayor? Because you still have to work within constraints or possibly conflict with other people. How do you do that?
So let's really take a look at our form of government. We are a city manager form of government. So it's the city manager who actually runs the city. The council, including the mayor, we all have the same vote. We all have one vote. Has no more power than the council person. So we set the policy for the city manager. And we give him the direction of where we like to see things go, but it's up to the city manager to run the day-to-day operations of the city. So where the mayor differs is he presides over the meetings, which does give him a little bit more than a council person because he's controlling and guiding the meetings. And then he's also the official face of the city. So at most of the public events, he's representing the city, he or she. And another difference is, as a council person, you're primarily focusing on your ward. And you also understand that you're one of 6 pieces that make up the city. So, but as the mayor, you're over the 6 pieces as well, not just a small ward. So you have to be able to, understand all parts of the city, not just your ward.
Absolutely. You mentioned transparency, number one priority. Has that been an issue before? And as being a long time Fort Myers resident, what have you, what in the past have you seen that you'd like to change?
I think we need to be more open, honest, and direct with our citizens. Most of the time, citizens, when they have an issue, they want to be heard. They want to believe that somebody will listen to them and will do something about it if they can. And that's why I never promise anything to people except 3 things. 1, I will listen. If you have a complaint, I will listen. 2, I will look into it. And 3, if there's something I can do, I will do it. The problem with making a promise is you can find out that there may be a legal reason why you can't make that happen. Somebody calls you about a problem and says, oh, that sounds easy. That should be something we should be able to do. Then you find out that there's restraints or constraints, whatever, where the law doesn't permit it, or the law requires something else, or, it's like, I can't say, well, I'm going to get with council person so-and-so over that. I can't do that unless we do it in a public meeting because of sunshine. So I'm very careful about not making promises other than I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to look into it, and if I can do something, I will do it, no matter how small it is.
Very good. As a longtime law enforcement officer, how do you reconcile these days with your background and what any kind of message that you want to get out?
I'm very saddened by the state of affairs. I know overwhelmingly police are good people trying to keep their community safe, and they're put in very difficult positions. And unfortunately, sometimes there's misconduct. And that's where I'm a big proponent for accountability. And that doesn't mean terminating every time, an officer makes a mistake. No, we invest in hiring officers. And so we should do our best to make sure that we don't cut them loose until it's absolutely necessary, that we've done everything we can to save our investment. Turnover is very costly. I always tell the new recruits, any chance I get to talk to them, I always tell them, don't make this job about you. Make it about serving your community, and it will become about you. You go out there and you do a good job, and people will recognize you for that, and it will become about you. You'll be recognized as a good officer, and good things will happen. But if you're out there trying to make a name for yourself, it's just like in business. I told a lawyer friend of mine when he first came to town, I said, don't make it about chasing the dollars. Make it about being the best lawyer you can be, and those dollars will chase you. So it's the same thing, same concept with police officers. Make it about being a good officer, someone who's dedicated to really serving this community, to making it safe, to treating everybody with respect and treating them fairly. At the same time, I get it. There are situations when you're relying on your instinct and your training. And you have to. Otherwise, it increases the potential for an officer getting hurt if he or she doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's a very delicate balance. And I'll have to, if I can take a minute, I really want to commend Chief Diggs and the police department and the protesters, both sides. It's just one or the other. But they met, they set down the guidelines. The department outlined what the protesters could expect from them. And subsequently, we had peaceful protests.
We did.
And that's a reflection on the police department. And it's also a reflection on the protesters. Because, and we have to remember, that's their First Amendment to be able to protest. Not to riot, not to loot, but to protest. And it's the First Amendment. And it's the First Amendment for a reason.
For a reason, yes.
That important. And so I commend the protesters for taking advantage of their First Amendment rights in the manner it was designed to be. And I commend the police department for respecting the protesters in that process. Well
said. Councilman Kevin Anderson running for mayor. Cheers to you. Water cup to water cup. I appreciate